Alright guys, hi, Blind Guy Garage. So what I've got here is this is the Kawasaki Prairie that in the previous videos you've seen this machine. We've been working on the rear axle, got that done. The machine was running great when it came in, but the carburetors are now squirting gas from out between the two of them. You got one there and one there. And it looks like y'all are getting right down in the middle, yeah. So, about the easiest way to get into these is you can leave most of it in the frame, but gotta go down through the top here. And where this leak is, get in there. Where this leak is, it seems as though it's coming right out of where the two carburetors come together. And they got an O-ring in between them. One feed line comes in and feeds both carburetors bowls with an electric fuel pump. So you got all these little screws here, and I'm not sure what size, because y'all keep in mind I can't see. But you might be able to see. I don't know. It feels like to me it's around a 5/16. In metric, that's going to be your 8mm. I know the the impact is right in your face, or right in the camera. But I'm using a long extension. Just makes it a little easier. You got to kind of pry sockets around to get them to go in between all the stuff, and kind of pushes stuff out of the way. But somebody's been in this thing before, because all the screws on the sides of the carburetor have the corners of them pushed up, where it's basically showing me that the screws are starting to round out. So I'm having to take extreme care not to tear the screws up that are all Phillips screws. But anyhow, so it's not terribly hard to get into all of this stuff. It's very time consuming. I'm currently getting the magnet cleaned off so that I can use. Here's an old speaker magnet. You can get a magnet tray, but as long as everything's magnetic, I use one of those. It's just fine. It does the same thing, and especially if you're like me, I used to be into subs and stuff, and I still got a little bit of that stuff laying around. And but anyhow, you burn up a speaker, about all it's good for after that is a parts holder. So I gotta go get. I don't know if this is in the view right over here. Yeah. There's one bolt there. There's supposed to be another one here, up in there, but they didn't put that back, or it fell out one because it's loose as a goose. And as you pick this up, there's hoses connected to the bottom of this. There are also antifreeze hoses. There's a coolant hose running through these carburetors, I guess, to help warm them up so it runs better when it's hot. But we'll just see. I think that's a 10mm over there. And that's an educated guess, because most of the stuff on these four-wheelers, if it's not a bigger than a 10, it's usually a 10. Yeah, it's a 10. Pretty much a 8mm 10 millimeter, 12, 14, and 17. We'll take these all apart, these Kawasaki's. I like working on a Kawasaki a lot better. The Suzuki's and all the Chinese four-wheelers, they're not as easy to work on as usually. But Suzuki and Polaris are not very easy designs for a mechanic. And it's a kind of a special straight bolt. I have it in the rubber isolator for the air intake box. Let's see, now there's a lot of guys that are running they call it the hole modification, and it's you drill holes in the top of the breather cover of these. But I don't really like that, because we ride a lot of trails that got water in them and stuff. I'll have to find that. And as you ride with that, you can imagine it clogs, water gets up in that air box if you get going too fast in the water or too deep. So yeah, it might make it faster, but it makes it more fragile. And one of the cool things about these is they're usually not a bad four-wheeler as far as having to ever work on them. This one here, I think somebody's worked on it, but most of the time Kawasaki's seem to hang in there pretty good. I've not ever had a lot of major issues out of them, and what I have had major issues on, it was some that had just been beat to death. Machines go through heck. So there's a breather tube. It's got a squeeze clamp on it down in here, and I like using these because of that bend. Kind of helps. These are some kind of fishing pliers, I don't know, but they work good on that kind of stuff, because you can get down there and turn a corner. And I might see how long there's two more hoses in the front, on the front side under here, and if they're long enough, I might just pull it up and leave them. No, if I do that, y'all ain't gonna be able to see nothing. And they got squeeze clamps on them too, but they're not terribly strong. I can get them with my fingers. Sorry, I'm not my normal bubbly self today. I'm just not feeling too hot. But ta-da! It's out. You see, there's where your hoses hook. You got two hoses right here by the vent, or that's the fluid drain. You got the other big hose that goes right there. I'm gonna set that on the footboard on the other side. I try to keep all my parts sitting on the machines. So we got those two hoses. Now see, there's the rear carb, slide valve. That's kind of, I always check those. You want them to have a kind of a slow return. But this thing was blasting gasoline out of there, so, and it looked like it was coming from right in here, just under this area. Nothing came out then. I smell it though. And see, these are set on their side normally. Normally carburetors sit on this part. That's where your bladder is for your slide valve. is usually up and down, not sideways, so it's a little bit different setup than normal. There it goes. I don't know if y'all can see anything or not. I can't. But that's just kind of my life story. Let's see here. Now I'm under there. I gotta, because I remember when I was on it and it was gushing. I can remember about where I was feeling the gas come flying out at. I can smell it. There it goes. And it feels like the transfer tube for the fuel transfer tube is leaking. It's coming out kind of high. I think it's coming out right there. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's there. Alright, so fuel comes in from this hose right here. And it fills this carburetor up first. This feeds one cylinder. Then it fills up into the chamber here and goes into this carburetor. These two carburetors are identical. They're only casted different so that one could feed the other. They could have set this whole thing up where you had a splitter or Y or a T on the fuel line, and you had a front and rear carb that were identical, because 90% of the parts out of this one will fit into this one and vice versa. So, but now it looks like we're going to have to get a kit, and I'm not even going to tear it down any further, because I guarantee you the O-ring that's in there is screwed up. And which is now going to mean that these have got to come off. And I could probably put a generic O-ring in there, take them off and put a generic O-ring in there, but the guy that the customer, his yeah, there's the splitter for the choke. He had a complaint that it wasn't running 100%. But I mean, when I drove it, it seemed okay, but you couldn't get on it very much and hammer down much because of the rear axle swing arm was all jacked up. So, but regardless of whether or not I get a kit, that needs to come off. So I suppose I could go ahead and take them off, but it just has two hose clamps that hold the throttle, to hold them down on there. You push them down on there, and there should be, I'm pretty sure there was a coolant. There's coolant hoses going to it too somewhere. A lot of times these are not, somebody's been in it, that means a lot of times for me that somebody's probably didn't get them tight either. So a lot of times I can go in after somebody else and I can just pop them off. They got them tight. And so I'm going to see if I can get a screwdriver up in there. Usually feels like this one's going to have to be a really long screwdriver. And sometimes this stuff's going to take more patience than you might be willing to give something. But I think what I'm going to have to do is just go get a really long screwdriver. Sorry for the silence. Concentrating. I don't know if you can see my index finger is. I'm turning the screw now, and they've rounded it out a little bit, so it's taking a lot of extra force to push in on the screw. I'm probably going to have to end up getting new clamps. Whoever worked on it rounded the screws out. It's either that or cut grooves in the head of the screw and turn it into a flathead. Because of the flathead that you did the work before tore the screws up. It's turning, it's just taking too long. I think we're loose enough to pop it out. Oh boy, well. Get another hose out of my way, maybe. It says, I'm thinking that's a crankcase vent that was in my way. Now, weaving between everything. Mercy. Guys, when you put stuff together, try to make sure you're using the right screwdrivers and stuff. Unless you just don't care. But when somebody else has to come in behind you and work on it and all the screws are stripped out or rounded out, it makes things a lot harder on the next fella. Let's try a different screwdriver. Maybe it'll grab a different spot on the screw. Feels like it's just jumping out. It was loose enough to pop the carb out. So I'm going to run with that one that way. And then I'm trying to figure out where they put where they oriented the other screw on the front clamp. Of course, you don't want to pull too hard on them things, because you're very likely to tear an intake tube, and then you got to get that. So and that front clamp's even a worse spot. There ain't no way to get that on camera. Guys, I'm still just trying to get the screwdriver in the hose clamp. That one on the front carb is really difficult to get to. But I don't think they tore that screw up as bad. So maybe we'll get a better shot on it. Yep. Alright, so now, I hope that wasn't in the video. Now our carburetors are loose. You just got a fuel line, and where is the antifreeze line? I know there's one in here. Get that and that. There's the adjustalizer for the hard idle. Where is the antifreeze hose on this thing? Has it been deleted on? Oh, there it is down there. Yeah, it's down there on the bottom. I knew it had one on it, I just couldn't remember exactly where it was. Yeah. And I'm thinking I might disconnect it from here. We got a coolant line, and I'm guessing this is a check valve. Oh boy, but it's got some squeeze clamps on it. It's just pretty much all they use on these machines, on everything. But ow, 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 your intake manifold. That hurts when them things pop and they get you under the fingernail. Yeah. It said it made a little whoosh noise for some reason. So there we go there. We're down to the fuel line, which getting that hose clamp out of there is a nightmare. So I'm taking it off of the frame instead of off of the car, because it'd be easier to do that on the bench, if I even have to do it. At a pretty extremely weird angle here. Still trying to get to the clamp that's on the dang frame down there. Well, maybe I can take it loose in the carburetor easier, just because of that weird angle down in there. I got a little crap. I never understood. I remember on the last ones that I did, never quite understood why they didn't make the inlet tube for the carburetor longer than they did, because it's pretty short. So then when you put the clamp and all on, it's up inside the body of the carburetor a little bit. So then you have to be careful not to lose that clamp. Then you have to fight it to get it off, because a lot of times they don't just slide off. Alright, now the next steps is going to be getting the throttle cable out and the choke cables. But if you've not worked on four-wheelers very much, you're going to love it. There's one in between the two carburetors, and there's almost no way to get it out. It's such a pain. And I'm trying to remember if I took the splitter apart the last time I flew with them to pull it all apart, or if I just worked on it on the four-wheeler. Because I have stuck rags over the intakes and just rebuilt on the carburetors in frame, because of that whole, I'm a guy that doesn't have the right size screwdrivers, so I'm going to use one that barely fits and strip out all this, round out all the screws. And that's typically what fellas do. And if you realize you're about to do that, how about stop, so you don't tear stuff up for yourself. Man, that one's not going to go. I wish they would use the same types of screws, or go over to bolts instead of screws as much, because it makes things a lot harder. It's been a minute since these have been off, because every screw I take off pops when it takes loose. So pull that cable out of the way if I can. pretty dangerous situation right now anyway, because if I screw up, I could drop this screw down the intake of this four-wheeler. But I'm trying to put it back in the bracket so I don't lose the screw, because it's a little one. Them little screws like to run off. They don't like to stay put. Now carburetors are almost upside down. It's just one of them things. It takes a while to get this stuff loose. I think I'm going to pause the video for a while now.